Hello all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. Netflix reported that it lost 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter of 2022. Twitter should take a close look to ensure that it doesn't suffer the same fate. And speaking of Twitter, Elon Musk seems to be having a hard time getting investors to back his purchase of the company. Then we have Governor Ron DeSantis, who is considering suing the Twitter board for not fulfilling its fiduciary duty to investors. French President Emmanuel Macron seems to be having a hard time shaking Marine Le Pen from voters' minds. And finally, if the Shanghai Lockdown continues and the CCP includes the port, supply chains could be seriously hampered. Okay, let's get into it. Netflix, the once popular streaming video and audio platform, reported on April 19th that it lost 200,000 subscribers in the first quarter of this year. It is the first decline in subscriptions in more than a decade, and the company expects to lose another 2 million subscribers by the end of the second quarter. The stock fell 25% on Tuesday after the news. That free fall continued on Wednesday. According to Breitbart, the stock fell as much as 12% in morning trading on Wednesday, bringing the stock's total loss to more than 37%. Since the start of this year, Netflix shares have plummeted a staggering 63%. Netflix attributed the loss of customers to global inflation, the war in Russia, the introduction of other video streaming platforms such as Disney Plus, and intense competition in the market. But Elon Musk pointed out that the real reason for its failure was the woke virus. He tweeted, "The woke mind virus is making Netflix unwatchable." A person posted, "Woke mind virus is the biggest threat to the civilization." Elon responded, "Yes." Many netizens even hope that Musk will take over Netflix also. If Twitter insists on not changing its course, it may just meet the same fate as Netflix. After Twitter adopted a poison pill in order to protect itself from Musk's $43 billion buyout bid, he didn't stop there. Musk shared the Elvis Presley classic "Love Me Tender" in a tweet right after the social media company announced its decision. The New York Post reported, citing two sources familiar with the matter, that the billionaire is planning to launch a tender offer in about 10 days, and he has chosen Morgan Stanley to raise another $10 billion in debt. A tender offer is a bid to purchase some or all of a shareholder's stock in a corporation. It often occurs when an investor proposes buying shares from every shareholder of a publicly traded company for a certain price at a certain time. The Post also said that Musk may be willing to borrow against his current shares if necessary, a move that could raise billions of dollars more. But insiders revealed that Musk seems to be having more trouble than expected finding backers. Today, we published a video on our membership site breaking down all of Elon Musk's recent moves on Twitter. Here's the trailer. Elon Musk really wants to buy Twitter, just as we expected. The price he offered was $43 billion. This, of course, provoked full-scale opposition from the left. Musk himself knew that buying Twitter would be like setting off a bomb, and it could be dangerous at any time. Musk is one of the most active tweeters with one of the most followers. He could have sat back and enjoyed the benefits of Twitter, avoiding the media and communicating directly with millions of users. He could have been in bed with the left, much like most of the rich. But he appears to want to make Twitter more neutral, more transparent, and more supportive of free speech all by himself. Regardless of your attitude toward Musk himself, his efforts to promote free speech, if that is the case, does deserve strong support. We'll go into more details on our membership site at frontpageshow.com. I hope to see you there. Okay, let's get back into it. Elon Musk's first ally has emerged, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. No, DeSantis is not lending money to Musk. He is suing Twitter. DeSantis waded into Musk's Twitter buyout saga on Tuesday, saying that Florida would look into holding Twitter's board accountable for breaching their fiduciary duties for turning down Musk's takeover offer. This is one of the possible consequences of adopting the poison pill plan, as we have analyzed in our membership video. DeSantis made the remarks at a press conference on Tuesday in Florida. He mentioned Musk's recent offer to buy Twitter. He said, what Musk is trying to do is basically liberate it, Twitter, from being an agent of censorship into making it an actual open platform like it's advertised. DeSantis believed that Twitter's rejection of Musk's financially lucrative offer was not based on business, but on politics. The governor said they rejected it because they know they can't control Elon Musk. They know that he will not accept the narrative. He added, that's why they did it. It was not, in my judgment, because it wasn't a good business deal. The state of Florida and its pension system holds some Twitter shares. As a shareholder of Twitter, Florida has the right to protect its investment, DeSantis announced. So we're going to be looking at ways that the state of Florida potentially can be holding these Twitter board of directors accountable for breaching their fiduciary duty. In this year's chief executive election, Hong Kong has only one candidate, who is John Lee. The current chief executive, Carrie Lam, announced that she will not seek re-election. Although Lee has no opponents, YouTube suspended his campaign propaganda channel. This is because Lee was the Secretary of Security when he suppressed the 2019 Hong Kong protests. In August of 2020, following the CCP's full implementation of national security laws in Hong Kong, the U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions against 11 Hong Kong and Chinese officials who were involved in human rights violations and undermining Hong Kong's autonomy, including Lam and Lee. All personal assets of the sanctioned individuals in the U.S. were frozen, and U.S. companies are not allowed to provide funds, goods, or services to the sanctioned individuals. YouTube stopped Lee's propaganda channel under this law. Hong Kong has less and less room for freedom of expression under the CCP's crackdown. However, it is still possible to use Western social media platforms in Hong Kong that are banned in mainland China. Lee has been working hard to publicize his uncontested campaign, including on Facebook and on YouTube. It is unknown whether other U.S. social media outlets will follow suit with YouTube. As of April 20th, Lee's Facebook page was still operating normally. In fact, in the nearly 2 years since the U.S. announced the sanctions, Facebook has not stopped Lam's account either. Carrie Lam has also still been posting updates on YouTube. Perhaps this has something to do with the fact that the YouTube channel generates advertising revenue. A Meta representative said in response to a reporter's inquiry that Lee could continue to use his Facebook page and Instagram account. The Meta rep also said that Meta has taken measures not to allow the pages and accounts to use services that have any payment practices. Meta, as a U.S. company, must operate under U.S. law, and it may take corresponding compliance measures in the future in response to different situations. Blocking John Lee's YouTube channel has sparked a lot of debate among Hong Kongers. However, few sympathize with Lee. Some netizens sarcastically said that Lee, as a selected official of the Chinese Communist Party, should not have used capitalist platforms like YouTube to promote himself because this would have been supporting U.S. companies, and it is counter to Lee's philosophy of protecting national security. There are also netizens who say that some CCP supporters in Hong Kong call the U.S. a foreign subversive force, but they keep using U.S. cell phones, U.S. software, U.S. social media platforms, and even eating U.S. food. They say if they were to practice what they preach, then they should completely stop using all products and services from capitalist Americans. So, should us capitalist Americans stop using products from communist China? On Wednesday, April 20th, French President Emmanuel Macron and challenger Marine Le Pen held a key debate ahead of the second round of voting in the French presidential election. The election is attracting global attention because a change of power in France could change the political balance in Europe, reshaping relations with the CCP and Russia and affect France's position in European trade negotiations with the world. 5 years ago, Macron wasn't even 40 years old when he entered the Elysee Palace. But the re-election bid is turning out to be a hard fight. Attacked by opponents as a rich man's president, he didn't dare underestimate his opponent. He vigorously campaigned on the weekend before the election, throwing out new commitments to environmental protection and canvassing votes. The final election is scheduled for April 24th. Polling agency Ipsos Sopra Steria published a poll on April 16th indicating that 55.5% of respondents would vote for Macron. Another 13% said they would vote, but still did not express their opinion. However, this does not mean that Macron has a clear chance to win. The attitude of the far-left followers of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who came in third in the first round of voting, is key. As we analyzed last week, Mélenchon is a leftist, and theoretically his voters will turn to support Macron, but Mélenchon's attitude toward the EU is the same as Le Pen. As the war between Russia and Ukraine continues, it is difficult to estimate how the public will choose. Mélenchon's own attitude is not very clear either. He publicly called for never vote for Le Pen, but did not express his support for Macron. Most of his supporters indicated that they are not going to vote in the final election, or they intend to vote for a null vote. A poll by Opinion Way Key Partner shows that about 14% of voters are waiting for the debate to help decide who to vote for, while 12% say the debate will be decisive in whether they will vote at all. The analysis suggests that as long as Le Pen can successfully win voters who have not made up their mind, it is still possible to flip the election her way. The matchup will be a chance to convince voters that she is capable of becoming president and that they should not be afraid to see the far right in power. How did Macron go from being a young man and energetic president to being accused of being a rich man's president today? On the one hand, French people think that their lives have not improved in the past 5 years. The year after Macron took office, the Yellow Vest movement occurred and people protested against the government's policy of raising fuel taxes. Protests were held every Saturday across the country. Then, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Macron pushed a mandatory vaccine policy and he pushed unvaccinated people to get vaccinated. The public perceived Macron as arrogant and uninformed. Less than 5 months before the election, the Independent Institute for Public Policy Studies released a study showing that Macron's political and economic policies had indeed increased the profitability of the wealthy and had reduced the standard of living for the poor. The income of the top 1% increased by 2.8%, while the average purchasing power of the bottom 5% fell by 0.5%. Energy prices in Europe rose last year. In addition, after the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war, people are more sensitive to changes in energy prices. Le Pen shouted her political views to reduce the value-added tax on oil and gas energy from the current 20% down to 5.5%. She stressed the need to raise everyone's purchasing power. She wants to be the president of every Frenchman, not just a president for the few like Macron. Le Pen has accurately assessed the international situation. She said in an interview on Monday that once elected president, she would engage with Russia after the war in Ukraine to ensure that the Russians would not ally with communist China. Otherwise, it would be the greatest danger of the 21st century. Le Pen is seen as pro-Russian by mainstream media. She said that France and Russia have common civilization and strategic interests. But during the Russia-Ukraine war, she expressed her support for Ukraine and the sovereignty of the country. Once the war is over and a peace treaty is signed, she believes it is necessary to reach out to Russia diplomatically to avoid an alliance between Russia and the CCP. Le Pen explained, when you have Russia, the world's #1 producer of raw materials, forming an alliance with China, the world's #1 factory. I think that could be very dangerous. Shanghai has been fully closed for weeks now, with some areas of the city being closed for nearly 40 days. The impact has not only affected the lives in Shanghai, but also the logistics of transportation around the world. Freight delays caused by the city's lockdown have exacerbated global supply chains and inflationary pressures. The port of Shanghai is the world's largest container port, and it was responsible for 20% of China's foreign trade throughout last year. Clearly, a prolonged closure of the city would seriously affect global supply chains. A study by the Banco de España Exterior said, if the port of Shanghai stops operating, the global supply chain will directly feel the pain when it is difficult for other nearby ports to fill its gaps, given its huge capacity. While the port of Shanghai currently remains open, traffic to and from the airport and to container terminals is severely restricted due to the limited access of surrounding roads and bridges. Chinese media reported that congestion has been ongoing at the port of Shanghai since early March. The number of ships waiting to load and unload at the port increased nearly five-fold since April 1st. Trucking is an important part of China's supply chain, with Chinese road traffic carrying more than 70% of the freight. Currently, interprovincial highway entrances and exits in at least 10 of China's coastal provinces are closed, which is restricting truckers' movement, and it is making it difficult for many businesses to pass raw materials and manufactured goods between ports and factories. According to a survey of 167 U.S. companies conducted by the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, as of April 1st, more than half of the local U.S. multinationals have lowered their annual revenue expectations due to the lockdown in Shanghai. And more than 80% of manufacturers have reported a lack of employees and the unavailability of raw materials, causing production to slow. Chinese manufacturing accounts for about 1/3 of the world's manufacturing. More than 15% of U.S. imports come from China, while 70% of active pharmaceutical ingredients in India, which is a major drug producer, also come from China. And in Vietnam, 24% of the total added of manufacturing industry comes from Chinese components. Ryan Peterson, CEO of freight forwarder Flexport, said that Chinese factory closures and the lack of available truckers to move goods have delayed the transportation schedule of supply chains. Peterson said in 2019 that it would take only 50 days for goods to arrive at U.S. warehouses from the time that they were produced in Chinese factories, but at this stage it will take an average of about 4 months. U.S.-China Business Council spokesman Doug Barry said that Christmas orders need to be completed by the summer and that port closures could cause costly delays and possibly even cause shelf shortages for year-end holidays. A spokesman for the International Chamber of Shipping said that supply chain disruptions can have a lagging effect and that the impact of China closures is expected to continue to fester in the coming weeks and months. Okay, and that's a wrap for this episode. But before we go, if you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth. Again, thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.